Peace, and welcome to another episode of the Quranic Remedies, where we spend about 20 minutes exploring a page from the Quran together and seeing how we can apply the verses to our lives. And hopefully, with God's permission, it helps us heal our brain, body, mind, and soul. So today we'll be reading from chapter 2, the cow, from verses 238 up until 245. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I seek refuge to God from the accursed devil. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the merciful, the gracious. حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى وقوموا لله قانتين. Observe the litanies together with the middle litany and stand obediently before God. فإن خفتم فرجالا أو ركابا فإذا أمنتم فاذكروا الله كما علمكم ما لم تكونوا تعلمون. And if you fear, then by walking or by riding, and when you are safe, then commemorate God as He has taught you that which you did not know. والذين يتوفون منكم ويذرون أزواجا وصية لأزواجهم متاعا إلى الحول غير إخراج فإن خرجن فلا جناح عليكم فيما فعلن في أنفسهن من معروف والله عزيز حكيم. And those who are caused to die among you while leaving wives, for their wives is a legal will to provide for a year without eviction. But if they should exit, then there is no blame on you concerning what they do for themselves of kindness, and God is almighty and wise. وَلِلْمُطَلَّقَاتِ مَتَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. And for the divorced women is a provision in kindness, as a duty upon the pious. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. God thus clarifies His verses to you, perhaps you will reason. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ خُرِجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ ألم تر إلى الذين خرجوا من ديارهم وهم ألوف حذر الموت فقال لهم الله موتوا ثم أحياهم إن الله لذو فضل على الناس ولكن أكثر الناس لا يشكرون. Have you not considered those who went out of their homes while they were thousands, being cautious of death, and God said to them, Die, and then He revived them. Indeed, God possesses favor for mankind, but most of the people are not thankful. وقاتلوا في سبيل الله واعلموا Inna Allah Sami'un Alim. So fight in the way of God and know that God is hearing and omniscient. من ذا الذي يقرض الله قرضا حسنا فيضاعفه له أضعافا كثيرة والله يقبض ويبسط وإليه ترجعون. Who is there that would loan God a good loan so He may multiply it for him in manifold? For God seizes and extends, and to Him you will be returned. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. God the Great said the truth. Now, these verses are a continuation, just a few verses in regards to the divorce process and for relationships that are either strenuous or they're coming to an end, and as well for these wives that are left behind if someone does pass away. But there is an interesting note that as God was talking about divorces and the process of divorces, He did start to talk about the prayer. And this is in the first verses that appeared, where God did mention that we have to observe our prayers and to make sure that we are looking at the middle prayer, that we're taking care of the middle prayer. Now, for me, the thing that I find that it's very interesting that God is talking about these relationships that are strenuous, that the relationship is being severed, either by death or by agreement or sometimes by force and necessity. But then God is now discussing the concept of our prayers and to make sure of the middle prayer, which is the night prayer, the one that happens after the evening prayer and to deplete into the night. Because the thing is that people have no problem, even in their good relationships, to spend a very long time, especially at night, talking with their partners and spending this time of romance and love with each other. But then they only have like 20 minutes, 30 minutes for God, and sometimes they don't even give that because they're so enwrapped with the relationship and they're so in love with what's going on that they tend to devote a lot of time into that. But this is also true in regards to people losing their relationships because they've been so devout to their partner and they're putting all this energy where the other person is not capable of sustaining that much attention and energy, and they now have moved away from their prayer and they're not really sustaining their prayers the way that they should. And at that point, the person starts to rely on the relationship more than they're relying on God and a relationship with God. So the capability of actually disconnecting from your family, disconnecting from your business, disconnecting from your love, from everything that's going on, to adhere to the discipline that God has shown us, the way that He wants us to remember Him and commemorate Him. This is something that's very important because this is where you are capable of always training yourself the ability to let go of anyone in your life. Whether through death, whether through necessity, or whether through agreement, people are going to leave, right? So the prayers is important for you to remember the priorities. Now, God is here telling us that within our prayers, He wants us to stand obediently. This is something that is part of the prayer where we are standing, focused, dedicated to God in the moments that we're praying to Him. Now, the next point where God starts talking about the fear, right? That you can do your prayers while walking and riding. There is an exception. But this is also showing that there is a physical aspect to the way that you're supposed to connect to God. And the only thing that is amazing, God has shown us the best way. God has shown us the way that He wants us to commemorate Him. This is knowledge that was not apparent to the human being. That standing and then talking to God, calling upon your God, going through what God has taught you from the book, reciting the book, pondering about the book, and prostrating to God, that this way of talking to God is the most efficient. This is the way that is the most accepted and gets you closest to God. Because A, you are dedicating your time for that moment to what needs to be done. And at the same time, you are observing it the way that God told you is the most efficient for the human being. There's also verses where God says that the prayer is certain times. These are set times and they're prescribed times for the believer. So when the time does come and you are in a moment of where you would get hurt, where people would either steal from you or hurt you, kill you, or attack you, because you shouldn't be distracted while you're praying, that there is no blame on you, there is no harm if you do it while you're walking or while you're riding. But this is not something that you can do if there is no fear or if there is no possibility of harm. And then God, after He's discussing with us the importance of the prayer, God then starts to discuss again about the people who die, pass away, and leave their wives behind. Now, there is a verse earlier about the waiting period on how long a widow should wait before getting married. But now God is also telling us here that there's a will. There is something that you have to keep in mind, that you are supposed to be capable of providing for your widows for a whole year where she does not need to leave her property. Yes, in this day and age, it's kind of difficult for the people who are living in rent and having situations where the job is not providing enough money. And obviously, God knows this, and He's very aware of the oppressors and how they set up the society. But it is very clear that God wants us to have like almost a year plan or a year savings for our wives, so that when we do pass away, they're capable of staying and sustaining themselves within that year. Now, the important part is this is also around the people, like the brothers and sisters of the person who passed away, the family. You can't force his ex-wife out of the house before the year. You can't sit here and try to put pressure for her to leave. But the thing is, if she chooses to leave, if she chooses after her 4 months and 10 days of waiting, if she opted to go get married and move into that person's house, or to move houses, then it is her right, because God says that there is no harm in me that I did not finish providing for her in those 6 months because she opted to leave in the last 6 months, or she opted to sell the house. These are all her decisions at that point. This is a will that I have to fulfill. Okay. Now, when it comes down to these wills, this is something that is also showing you the importance of the people that are your spouses, in a sense where they have a right on you that you have to provide for them, that you have to feed them, that you have to clothe them, that you have to find them dwelling. These are your priorities when you're married. This is something that is extremely important as a responsibility. And if you don't, then you are now taking without giving the part that is supposed to be done. Now, God is also talking about the divorced women. Like you as a believer, it is a role upon you that even if you divorced somebody, that you have to show this kindness of providing for them, taking care of them, being as approachable as you can without crossing the limits, of course, nor starting different battles. Because a believer's state of mind should be going towards peace, should be going towards making these relationships as good as possible, despite it not being what is ideal. We have to be realistic in our approach. Now, as God says that some of your wives, I guess some of your husbands, are going to be enemies to you. But the way that you deal with your enemy, as God says in a different verse, that you have to treat them as your best friend. So the lady was not very nice to me. The way she's not respecting my authority, she's not respecting my business, and I had to disconnect from her. But there is a way that you could do it in kindness. There is a way that you could do it. They might not see it that way. They might not be receptive that way, and they might have their way of approaching the matter. But you, on the other side, you have to stick to what God has shown you. And after that's done, it's very good for you, since she's divorced and nobody's helping her, or she doesn't have somebody, to help her out once in a while. Like, hey, here's some food, here's a allowance. Don't worry, it's all good, because I get my repayment from God. And as God says in the verses, at the end of the verses that we read, when God is saying that, who is it that is going to give God a good loan? So God multiplies it for him. And then God, because he knows his servants very well, he is going to give what he wants, and he withholds what he wants. So some of your repayment will be on the day of judgment. You get a little bit of repayment in the world, so for you to reinvest it. Here we're talking about investments, that you're giving God a loan, God is multiplying that loan, and he's going to give it back to you, and it all gets paid back to you. This is what it means to be God's servant. And you can see the verse before that, God is talking about fighting. So God is saying to fight in the way of God. And God is hearing and omniscient. So these are things that you are doing for God. Now, in the cause of fighting, I'm giving myself. I'm giving my body. It's not the bliss that I'm going to be within for doing so is going to be multiplied, but my body itself is not going to be multiplied. So that the trade here is, I'm trading my soul for the hereafter. I'm trading this world for the hereafter, and the hereafter is much, much better than this world. But when it comes down to your money, to your wealth, the more you pay in the way of God. So the way of God can be explained in many ways, but a concept is, okay, I am trying to propagate and make the message reach more masses. That is working in the way of God. So if I pay for brochures, I am now investing in God's message so that the message comes out. The investment here is not for my money to become more, but it's for me to help in the process. They need the money I give. They need people to pass out the brochures. If I have people, I would provide it for free, because at this point I'm giving God the loan, and God will pay me back. Isn't this isn't this one of the best ways of approaching life? Is you're always dealing with God. You're making trades with God. You're making covenants and contracts with God. And God will fulfill his side as long as you're fulfilling your side, and you're in trouble if you don't. And one other thing, which is spoken a little bit earlier, and about how, one, God shows you the verses for you to understand on how to deal with the relationships, that they shouldn't be your end all be all, where it's you're investing all your time in your spouse, but yet you can't make the time to stand your religion correctly. And with that said, God is then now talking about how people can fall into the concepts of fear. Fear is something that is extremely crippling. People start to get scared of other human beings. They get scared of circumstances. They get scared of the unknown. But you have to really rely on God. So God told us about a group where there were thousands of people, and they were scared because people might have wanted to hurt them, or they were just worried that they're going to die. So God is clearly showing them, like, look, I'm the one who's going to cause death to you, and I bring you back. So who is there to fear if you're fearing death? People can cause you pain, people can cause you hurt, but this is not something that should cripple you from you not leaving your house or immigrating or fighting or doing what you want. Pain is something that is extremely important for the believer. Yes, there's pain that is a punishment, but there's also a pain where it's constructive. You working out in the gym, that causes you physical pain that has a positive result. You standing in your prayer and being very obedient and being very patient and pushing the limits of your prayer, i.e. praying an hour and a half at the night prayer instead of praying 45 minutes. So you double the time. This takes effort. This takes spiritual commitment and spiritual pushing, just like how you would do in a gym. But then the result is, as God says, it's multiplied manifold by a lot. These are concepts that we need to stay aware of. These are concepts that we need to still always have in the back of our mind that God is here in a way to protect us as long as we're working for Him. Are we trading with God? Are we fighting for God? Are we striving for God? Is our relationship taking the priority over what we're doing for God in serving? Are we making decisions based upon our emotions and based upon trying to please our spouse instead of doing what would please our Lord? Because if you start doing that, it's not going to crush you instantly, but in the long run, in a long-term relationship, it is going to hinder you. It is going to cause you problems. This is where now you're going to lead up to having these ugly divorces or these separations. And if you have kids, the kids are going to be involved. It's because the person that should have been taking the part, should have made the difference, they were not making the difference. This is something that you should kind of test at the beginning. And of course, people have growth, especially teenagers, and the way teenagers see the world, to early 20s, to 30s, to 40s. It's much different. But if God was always the cornerstone of your decision making, if I am approaching somebody, if most of this in this day and age, which it's kind of very apparent, a lot of people judge the person based upon on how they look and their sexual appeal. That is what people are driven towards when it comes down to these relationships, which, yes, it does have a part, but it's not the priority. It's very nice and it's very easy to look at the opposite sex and you say, hey, wow, she's really beautiful. She's gorgeous. I would love to make her my wife. Why? Because she's gorgeous. But are we actually looking at people the way that we're supposed to look at people? Is that, would she be a good mother? Would he be a good father? Would he actually care and take care of me? Or is he just thinking about certain things? Is he promising me things that sound very good, but it's not possible, it's not achievable? How are you going to promise me the world? How are you going to tell me that we're going to be together forever when you have no idea what the future really holds? The only way that you could promise your spouse together forever is if you really want to be together and we really love each other and we're soulmates, then let's get to heaven. Let's put this incredible love that God put between us, this connection, this strong connection that we have, where we're capable of working together, where we're loving together, where we just want to wrap and become this single entity because of this love that we have. But let's use that so that we can be together forever as a pair in heaven. How do we get to heaven? Well, not by giving you the attention, not by me wanting the attention, but putting God the attention. So we're now working together into giving a loan to God. How can we make this world a better place? Through our love. How are you going to be a mirror of my dedication to God while I'm going to be a support to what you want to give to God? You want to open an orphanage? Then open an orphanage and I will do what I can to help you. Because now you have a motivation. Now you have an objective. You have an ambition. When you are approaching your spouses, you should notice an ambition. And the ambition is whether it's for the worldly life or whether it's for the hereafter. Yes, some girls, their ambitions, some ladies, their ambition is to, I want to raise a family. I want to have kids. I want to sit at home and take care of children. Why? Because I want to raise God-fearing children. I want to raise children that want to serve God. I want to have many children. Well, that's an ambition. That is a goal. That is an objective that you as a partner, now you know the long-term goal, you see the capability. Why? Because I do love God and I want to also raise God-fearing children. She sounds like she would be an excellent mother. You meet somebody else. My objective is to start a business. Why? So I can take money and create small projects to make the world a better place for people in bad communities. Okay, wife, how can I help you? How can I support you? How can I be there with you? Because now the relationship did not become about this bond that God has created between us. This is a bond for us to get attracted or to repel so that we can move forward in life. The point in the life here is not to just sit here and dwell to your wives. You have to have a second, you have to have a home with your wife, and you have to have the mercy and the affections, but you also have to have a purpose. Sometimes your wife is here to help your purpose. So that she is so willing, she's so loving, she's so obedient that she wants to see you succeed because she sees that you are a God-fearing man. And personally, what I found in life is that as soon as you really do dedicate yourself to God, The people, the girls, the ladies, the women who have a sense that of God's existence and they do love God to a certain extent, you become attractive to them naturally. It's something that they understand because they see that you are not desperate for her attention because you're content with the attention that you have. They sense that you are a person that is not a liar, that you're not a player, that you're not deceitful. Yes, first impressions can be a little bit weird, but after time, they see the consistency. And this is something that is attractive for a girl because for a lady, because she understands that it can be a solid home, a positive home where the children are happy and she's happy. This is something that God is teaching us on how to deal with each other. And on the other end, when you do see a girl that is considering God, when she does mention God, when she is worried for you in a way that it's motherly love, well, how is she going to treat the children? How is she going to take care of your children in a very good way? But on the flip mode, if you're meeting a girl and all she's talking about is gossip and things that look pretty to her and this worldly life and how like she would love for you to live in that city and she would love for her to have this size house and this kind of stuff, yeah, that's nice to have, but I don't think you're on the same path as me, and I don't think you're on the same mission as me. You want things to be happy, but while the person who's good, they want God to be happy. So, with that said, I really do hope you use your relationships, whether it's your kids, whether it's your parents, whether it's your spouse, to a way to please God rather than to please the other individual. Because in the process of pleasing God, most of the time, not all of the time, you end up pleasing the individual in front of you. And, these relationships they take a big toll on us on the day of judgment. They have a very big say on the day of judgment, your wives, your parents, your children, because there is an important bond there. That is the closest people to you. This is the closest of your network. These are the people you affect the most. You really have to ponder with God's verses and heal yourself, because as you're healing yourself, you're healing the relationships that you might have caused some problems in it. Am I a person that was difficult to deal with? Let me look in the history. What did God say about these circumstances? I was in the error. Yes, there are things that triggered me, but I was in the error. Let me apologize to my wife. Let me apologize to my mother. Let's move on and let me recognize these errors that I did. Why? So God will be happy with me. So God will be pleased on me and I don't have to get in trouble with it on the day of judgment because I made the amends. And with that said, we do have a Telegram group. If you guys want to carry on the discussion, I'm going to link it below. And I really hope you guys are enjoying these. These are also available on Spotify. You'll find a link in the descriptions if you want to hear it in a podcast in an audio format. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. God's blessings and peace upon you, and thank you very much for tuning in.